My name is Ben Geisler. I got my start in the industry. I live I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, basically, which is middle of nowhere for game dev. It's not even Madison, but I mean, it's close enough to Madison. That's kind of where
Yeah.
I got my start. My start was actually at Raven Software in Madison. Was going to school for artificial intelligence back in the 90s, and I got my start in the year 2000 at there was the first Raven's first Soldier of Fortune game, just Soldier of Fortune it was called, got kind of panned for having not good AI or whatever. So
Eh,
they hired me and this one other person, Chris Reed, to kind of be their AI experts at the time on Soldier of Fortune 2. So I was on the sequel to Soldier of Fortune. That was my first game, and that was in 2000. I think it released in 2003 or 2002, somewhere in there,
mm,
probably 2002. And then I went on to, and so my main thing is I'm a programmer. So I'm an engineer. That's how I got my start. I was doing like all the AI, all the enemy like logic for like when the guys would come running at you and shooting you and stuff. So it was fun. From there, I moved on to Radical Entertainment out in Vancouver, British Columbia, which was quite a change of pace because
yeah.
I mean, so nice and warm out in Vancouver, and it was cool to live out there. I worked on Hulk Ultimate Destruction out there, which was like the big like breakout title, one of the breakout titles for Radical Entertainment. They went on to do Prototype,
Mm.
which I worked on briefly, but they had also done like Simpsons Hit and Run and Scarface and a bunch of stuff. They got bought by Activision, and now they're like not around anymore. But
I was just getting to say I hadn't heard that name in a good while, so that
yeah,
makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. I was just digging up on it. I just went down a rabbit hole the other night on Radical because apparently there's still like some kind of game company in that same building, but it was a cool building. It had like 3 floors and there were like 200 some people there, which at the time in 2003, having 200 some people work on a game was
Mhm.
a lot of people. Now, of course, that's not that many people, but for a triple A game, these days they have like 2,000 people or some insane thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, so I worked on Hulk Ultimate Destruction. I came back to Wisconsin after that and started a company. So I sort of started branching out into more than just programming. I was doing my own like developments and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I started this company called Frozen Codebase in Green Bay, which was a huge pun on, I don't know how you lean in terms of NFL, but it's basically a pun on the frozen tundra.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
I got you.
Lambeau Field
Lambo,
and all
yeah,
that stuff.
Lambo,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it was called Frozen Codebase, and we did Xbox Live Arcade, PSN. We did some Wii titles, like we did the Burger Time World Tour, which was
Oh,
like
yeah.
the latest Burger Time game. We actually, for a while, we were working on the Metalocalypse video game from that Adult Swim show. That got canceled. Unfortunately, Konami was doing it. That's a whole long
Hmm.
story, crazy stuff. But I don't know if you know the show, but it's like these heavy metal dudes that kind of go around. They've got like Nathan Explosion, Murderface, all these dudes that have like a heavy metal band and they just do ridiculous things.
Hmm.
But we were making that, and that got canceled. And then Frozen Kobe started to kind of wind down after that. So then I went to Human Head in Madison. So I went back to Madison, and I was at Human Head, which is, of course, I think you had Chris Reinhardt on
Mhm.
here at one point.
Yep.
He's a good friend, and he's one of the founders of Human Head. So I worked on the game Prey, which
Yeah.
ultimately got canceled as well. But then I worked on a number of other games after that cancellation at Human Head. Sometimes doing producer type stuff and sometimes doing programming type stuff. It just depended on the project. And that was great. At some point in there I decided I wanted to, I don't know, I had some weird pipe dream or I don't know. Like basically, I kind of decided I wanted to get out of games, so I went and got my PhD. So I taught for a while in like 2018. So I went to get my PhD at this place in Florida, and I got that. I did my dissertation. I actually worked in games still because I made a programming language for Unreal Engine 4.
Okay.
At the time, Unreal Engine 4, well, even to this day, Unreal Engine 4 uses blueprints, and I made this like language that basically sits on top of blueprints and creates blueprints for you, and a textual based one, kind of like Unity has and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That was my dissertation. Anyway, then I came back, like I went into teaching. I was like, oh, this sucks. Pretty much like I don't know, like it wasn't the students. I love the students. And I in fact still teach a college course to this day once per year. And I love working with students, but just like the politics of just the administration and stuff got really kind of infuriating to me. And I was
Mhm.
like, forget this. I just want to go back to making games. So I went back and I worked at Lost Boys on New World. I worked
Mhm.
on the title New World, and with Tim, like that's Tim Gerritsen's.
Tim
Like he's now retired, but him and Sean Nivens had started that up, and Rod and then Chase Jones is in there now too. But like I was basically a programmer on New World and kind of doing a lot of leadership on the early version of New World that we did. I left there because there's this place called Roar Studios started up, which was a music based. I've always had a love for music based games, which will get
Mhm.
into what I'm doing now. And I always wanted to work on a music based game, but I never got a chance. So I got this job at Roar Studios doing basically like they were doing some really interesting stuff. They had they basically would take a microphone and stick it next to a guitar and then determine what chords we're playing, and then the character would play the guitar according to the sounds that it was hearing, and then you could also
Oh.
like kind of have like live karaoke over it, basically is the best I'll call it, and then you
Hmm.
can kind of get a jam together and make your own music. They had some done some super cool stuff. Some of it that relates to what I saw you do with your music stuff, because some of it was
Mhm.
rap actually. Like they would have like a rap artist come in and do just like free form rap basically over like some backing tracks,
Mhm.
and then mix it all together, and you get to see the guy, with the mic and all that stuff. It was
Yeah,
pretty
that's pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah.
It was sweet. Yeah, I don't really know what happened to them. They had like kind of a layoff period, and then I think they're still around, but they're kind of a spin-off of Riot. Anyway, around that time, I kind of decided I wanted to work on Noise Paradox, which I can get into in a bit. It's this DJ beat matching game I'm doing now. But I did a move. My main job is Eline Media, which they work on. Can I share a screen on this?
You can.
I can. Okay. Uh, this is the Never Alone 2 like teaser trailer. I'll just kind of talk over it, but basically it's just the first Never Alone came out like in 2000, and it was just this story of Nuna and her fox companion friend, and
Mhm.
they just kind of go on an adventure together, and it did really well. And so now we're turning it into 3D. We're using Unreal Engine 5, and this was just the teaser we put out like over a year ago now, I guess. And
Very
we're kind of
cool.
like, so I've been here for like I've been at Eline. Oops, I've been at Eline for like over 2 years, and we're still working on the same game. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't have any news about when it's gonna come out or anything. It's
Mhm.
like, we're kind of right in the midst of it, and, like, today I'm speaking to you from Seattle.
Mhm.
They sent us out here to, like, kinda get together and just jam on the game, and, I think it's gonna be really cool. I mean, we're working with the Nupiaq people up in Alaska, their story, and, for example, just as a goofy side story, I was on a meeting with some of these folks, like, a year ago, I think, and they
Mhm.
had a shaman on the meeting, by the name of Yari, and I got, like, blessed by this shaman, like, in the Zoom meeting, so it's, like,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
'Cause now I got that going for me.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, you got the good juju on you right
I got
now.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I need for you
Yep.
to rub that off on the podcast.
I wouldn't be able to do it as well as she did. That was yeah, I mean, I don't know. She had, like, words of wisdom and yeah, I don't know what it all involved,
That's
but it
funny.
was wild.
That's
Yeah,
cool. That's pretty cool though.
yeah,
So I mean, you've been basically all over the spectrum. So let's start at the AI part because a lot of people think of the AI stuff, obviously now, but
yeah.
I mean, AI has been around for a very long time. It's just it hasn't been mainstream, I guess you could say. If I was not the big dummy that I was, I actually started taking some coding when I was in 8th grade and I
Oh, nice.
didn't follow through with it. But had I mean, I'd probably be in Silicon Valley, doing some type, you know what I'm saying? But like, that's just
Yeah.
sort of like the trajectory of how this technology and stuff has worked itself out. But like, what was sort of AI back then? And like, what is it like compared to like now, how everybody knows and thinks about it?
That's actually a really good, interesting question because so, like, it's odd for me, right? Because, like, back when I was studying AI, they actually have a term for it. It was called in the 90s, it was called AI winter, which is basically like nothing was going on in AI. I mean, there was a little bit like Carnegie Mellon had like gotten a car to drive across the country or something with all these cameras mounted to it. And it was like an AI self-driving car. That was back in like 98 or something. And that was like the biggest thing to happen in 98 or what. Well, I mean, I guess there were some other things like famously Deep Blue beat Kasparov in chess like
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
90s and stuff like that. But it was just like not a bunch was going on. People didn't really know about it much, but now it's definitely like it's all over the place. And I guess the distinction I would make is like you've got AI for agents and things that like happen either in the world or in a video game or in virtual reality. And then you've got like generative AI, like stuff that's, writing stories for you or generating images. I don't really prescribe to the whole generative AI thing. Like I feel like every time I try it, it writes crappy code for me or whatever. Like I use
Hmm.
Claude and stuff like that. And the code it writes is just, I'd rather just do it myself kind of thing. But the AI agent stuff has been around even before that. And I think it's like just doesn't really get the street cred or whatever. But like doing AI in video games has always been kind of a thing, like there
Hmm.
were AI people that would bounce around to different studios back in the early 2000s. And we had an AI summit at GDC, which, I'm wearing the shirt for GDC today, but we had like an AI summit that we'd get together and share stories about how you do pathfinding in like a 3D environment. And, you know, I have like a book article I wrote at one point about getting the soldiers to jump through or like the assassins or whatever to jump through the window, like in Soldier of Fortune 2. So like I feel like agent AI is definitely still like a really important topic inside of games that kind of goes like overlooked these days because there's this whole focus on generative AI. It's like, well, really, that's interesting, but there's also always going to be a need for opponents in video games.
Hmm.
So, I tell people like if you want to like start in programming, it's still a very valid way to start is like thinking about how you would make AI for like for a video game. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, good question. But it's also, as I said, it's kind of daunting to me in a way because like I was driving once. I remember when I first realized that really hit, I was going somewhere. I think I was going to GDC actually. So I drove down to Milwaukee Airport and I noticed the billboard saying like AI. It's something about AI. Study AI at some school like MSOE or something. I'm like, that's on a billboard. Whereas like back when I was studying AI, it's like no one knew what the hell. Like they
Yeah.
thought I was crazy or they thought I was nuts or something. Like, you're gonna
Yeah.
do what? You're gonna make little guys in a video game, like, and they're gonna have brains that didn't really make sense,
Yeah.
Like,
And nowadays you can make, say you're making a fighting game and you can make a computer good enough to where you could never win if you wanted to. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's like
absolutely, absolutely.
it's I'm imagining like just the scope and the breadth of it now is probably just where, and like you said, just a lot of people just not thinking of it in certain terms. But like you said, it's always bad guys in games. And I mean, that bad guy's doing stuff is not like it's somebody else on the other side controlling it, you know what I'm saying? Like saying, "Hey,
Right.
do this, do that." So that's definitely interesting for sure. So, you've worked on I mean, a multitude of games and have been in a multitude of sort of situations. Sort of talk about those different situations, because I've interviewed people that, are indie. Some people, obviously have been in the AAA space, just sort of up and down the
Yeah.
spectrum, really. And people have different experiences, sort of up and down that, especially now that the gaming industry is in flux, I guess you could say, sort of,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty tumultuous. So, like, what has sort of that experience been for you? Like, all the situations you've been to now being able to kind of control your own destiny, really, and kind of do whatever it
Yeah.
is you want to do. Like, how has that sort of journey been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because I definitely got my start in AAA, like, that's what Raven is, and, some of those games, like, I worked on Quake 4 over there and stuff like that, which is like a big title, and it's like, that was my start, and I didn't really realize at the time that I mean, I guess I was lucky, like, I didn't even really know what AAA meant, I thought it was
Yeah,
just, like, some guy that would tow your car or something, like,
yeah,
I didn't know, like, what it was, like, until I entered it, and then someone dropped that term one day, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's what this is." This is like, basically, it's been described to me the way it was at first described to me is it's basically like the titles you'd buy at Walmart for 50 bucks
yeah.
or whatever. So it's like
Hmm.
the big titles and stuff. And that's definitely a different animal than like what I'm doing now, which is more indie. Like Eli Media is definitely an independent company, and so is my side project, Noise Paradox. So I feel like it's a different animal, but there's definitely some similarities. There's a lot of similarities, actually. I mean, the way you create games is still fundamentally the same. One of the biggest differences, though, I think, is in indie, you have to wear a lot of hats. And I guess over the years, since I've been in games for like 25 years now, like I've gotten good at that, like being able to do design as well as programming, as well as like being a leader and figuring out how to position a title and stuff like that and like what we need to do or whatever. But I feel like, when you go into AAA, you have to specialize. I mean, I remember being on Quake 4 and we had someone that literally all they did for their whole job was make rocks for like 2 years, they just made rocks. And and they were really good at making rocks,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I mean, it's like they were amazing. Or on like Soldier, we had people that would just model guns for,
yeah.
that they're just the gun modeler basically. And like I think that's fine and it makes sense that you would specialize more in AAA. But also, like, to me, I guess I really prefer the indie space because you don't like get as siloed, like you're not just like
Mhm.
doing that one thing. You get to do like a bunch of stuff. And like I've been able to at Eline, I've been able to insert design opinions and like, try to like say, hey, we should do this or we should do that. Whereas like I think that's not as welcome at some of the bigger companies. And certainly on my side project, there I'm kind of like, you know, doing everything, including taking out the garbage kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's like it's just it depends on the scale. It's all about
Mhm.
scale, really.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on what side of that coin you wanna be on. Like you said, you can be the gun model person, because then, I mean, then I guess you could technically take that skills and work on other guns and other games and other
Yeah.
places, I
Yeah.
guess, you know what I'm saying? So, I guess
Right.
that's a thing, but, I mean, to your point, who wants to work on games for 2 years, like, guns for 2 like, just doing
Yeah.
that,
For
like
2 years, just
yeah, like,
working
just
on guns.
straight,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I can only man, that's something actually entertaining. You said rocks, so, I mean, like, that's like
Yeah. Rocks is a little bit less
how many
entertaining than
different
guns.
ways
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you make a rock? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, I guess it is.
Right.
He had to research different rocks and different gravels and so I mean, I guess if that's fun to you, I guess then, more power to you.
And it's whatever you prefer, right? Like, it's like if that's fun for you, then that's cool, and I'm
Mhm.
not who am I to judge kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I just like I don't know, even like AI as a focus, I'm not like, on Never Alone, I mean, on Never Alone 2, I mean, I have worked on some AI, but there's also other it's not like I'm the only guy to work on AI in the company,
Mhm.
so like we get to touch all kinds of things and definitely I do a lot more than just that. Like I do a ton of player mechanics and stuff like that, which is really these days what interests me more is like the mechanics of what the player is doing with the controls and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I think it's just nice to be able to spread out and get some variety in there.
Yeah, no
But yeah,
doubt. Yeah, no
yeah,
doubt. And then being in the Midwest and, in that sort of cultivative environment, I guess. But essentially just because
yeah,
like, my one time being out there, I mean, obviously it's grown now, with the amount of companies and different people like putting things into gaming. But obviously that hasn't always been a thing. And I mean,
yeah,
I'm just now recently learning that the Midwest is a place where, gaming is a hub, and that's where Dungeons and Dragons was,
yeah,
and then all it's like I'm just now learning that sort of side. So how has it been like being from there and sort of that environment sort of cultivated all of this gaming stuff for you? Or do you still think that
yeah,
it's sort of in the growing phase to where you don't even really think that it's even really gotten to the point to where it probably will be, I mean, given the investments that's probably going to be coming to the
right.
Midwest, stuff like that
Yeah,
to get investments.
yeah, it's honestly, I'm really lucky. I'm fortunate that way because, just fortunate to be from the Midwest because it's part of it's almost like it's just part of my upbringing really because, for example, like I've been playing D&D since 7th grade, you know?
Yeah.
And like it was just what we did when we were bored and every other night or so or maybe even every night I would go over to my buddy's house and we just play some D&D and it was like super and we even got to the point where we were making our own games. Like we made because we had been watching the Mad Max series, so
Okay, yeah.
we made a FARP, future Australian role playing.
Okay.
I mean, we were like in 8th grade or whatever, but like
Yeah.
and we just like basically just said, okay, what would it take to make a game like a paper-based game that is like D&D, but it has like a different system and stuff like that. So I've really been making games. I mean, honestly, since like 8th grade. I mean, I didn't get paid for it back then, but
Right.
and it's just part of it. And we had a local gaming store where I grew up along the coast of Lake Michigan in this small town called Manitowoc, which is like between Green Bay and Milwaukee. And, we had like multiple gaming stores, and it was like a town of like 30,000 people, and we
Hmm.
had like two or three gaming stores, which most major cities only have two or three. Like
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
like Seattle or something might have like three. Well, maybe they have more in Seattle, but you know what I mean. Like it's a lot. That's like a gaming store per 10,000 people. That's
Mhm.
crazy. Like So it's like, yeah, I think like growing up here, like, yeah, we learned early on that, yeah, it was made in like Geneva, Wisconsin, like Gary Gygax and all that. And then, to find out that Raven was there and from the early days in the 90s. And, actually, I don't know if you knew this yet, but it was actually located in Wisconsin for a brief period of time as well.
Hmm.
The creators of like Doom and Quake. But apparently the story goes that like it got cold and so then they left.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. So they
Yeah.
left and but that's kinda I think that's a big part of, like, why Raven succeeded is that they have that, that gaming mentality and as well as, like, it happened to be there and they had the technology and they could kinda leverage that. And now you look at Madison and it's like, yeah, it kinda makes sense, right? Because it's Midwest, it's Wisconsin, I really appreciate everything Ben Cavallo is doing with, like, the tax credit stuff and what the WGA is doing.
Mhm.
But it was really around even before that. I think, like, it's just that it's sort of coming to this, now with Ben Cavallo coming in and forming Midwest Games, it's really kind of coming to that tipping point,
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, now we even have publishers. We don't just have
Yeah.
a ton
Mhm.
of developers, but we got publishers as well. And I think it's really like that tipping point of what it could be. And I mean, Madison makes a lot of sense for other reasons. I mean, my alma mater is actually UW Madison, so I brag about it a lot. But it's got a super great computer science department, and that helps out a lot because all these programmers that we need in the industry can then just be coming from
Mhm.
programs like Madison and stuff like that
Yeah.
to really like fill the ranks of new engineers and stuff like that. So yeah,
That was one of the
it's
things
cool.
that I don't know if it surprised me or I was just sort of intrigued by was the amount of schools and the amount of people that were offering things at MDiv.
Yeah, yeah,
Being able to see the different programs and stuff, because I'm assuming that hasn't always been the thing, being able to just simply go to school. I mean, well, I know for a fact it hasn't been a thing, but you just haven't been able to go to school and say, "Hey, I'm going to school to make games, and I can find the particular path that I want to do, and I can do that." Whereas, like, probably even 10 years ago, if somebody said, I want to make games, then you probably were going in circles
yeah,
trying to figure out how you were going to be able to do that. So I
yeah,
think
for
it's
sure, man.
very
Yeah,
interesting that, all of these schools are actually starting to invest and see, people starting to see the money too, obviously. I mean, the gaming industry is a mega industry, if you want to call it that, bigger than a bunch of these other industries. So obviously people are going to see that and start to gravitate to it. But I think the gaming space as a whole has always kind of been sort of cultivated like this. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just sort of
yeah,
been fragmented a little bit. But
definitely.
talk a little bit about noise paradox. So
Yeah,
first, just introduce the game and let people know
yeah.
sort of what it is and just give us an overview of it.
Yeah, so noise paradox is really, it's really my passion project. It's been a long time in coming. I've been thinking about this since like 2018, and really the way I would sum it up is it's a story about a DJ that fell in love. So it's a DJ beat matching game based on this like kind of tropey thing of like a Romeo and Juliet story in the background. The characters, though, in this case, are non-binary, so it's very much like a modern take on it. I met up with a E. Dillhunt, who is also goes as Rook, who's an artist that I met up with on the train jam going from Chicago to San Francisco, which is a
Okay.
whole nother can of worms we can get down at some point. But I met her on a train, like developing games on the way, and so the two of us, and then a bunch of other people that sort of filled in, including I teach. I was telling you I teach a class a semester over at UWGB. So there's
Mhm.
like this other professor there by the name of Dr. Carr who wrote the story for it from his main job is teaching at UWGB. So it's myself, Dr. Carr, as well as E, and then a bunch of other people like this guy I used to work with at Human Head called Vic. And we've got some new programmers like Daniel and this other character artist, Kendall. So it's just a very small amount of us making this game. And it's a DJ beat matching game about a DJ that fell in love. And it was foretold that the two main characters that you can play, it was foretold that they shouldn't cross their musical styles together because it turns out I'm an ex-DJ. Like I used to DJ
Okay.
in college, mostly dark wave, like industrial,
Mm,
but some techno and some electro. In fact, I kind of got my when I used to DJ a lot, it was with Electro Clash, which I don't even know if anyone will remember
mm,
what the hell that is, but it's kind of like electro breaks is what it is. Anyway, long story short, there's so many different types of music and so many different types of DJs, right? And they were told that they can't mix their two styles. And it turns out that if they do, they basically save the world. So that's, that's a long kind of summation of like
Mhm.
basically it's a beat matching game that like we had to have a story of some sort. Like I knew what the mechanics I wanted to be because like the mechanics to me are the most important part because when you're DJing, and I know you have music, through 2.4, and I took a look at your stuff and like I think you know what I mean. Like it's at some level being a DJ is kind of like a game because you have to find the beat and you
Mhm.
have to in one ear and maybe you've got what's going on the floor in the other ear and you're like matching it at the time and you got to start on the beat. If you don't start on the beat, it's going to be a train wreck and then you got to crossfade appropriately. And hopefully you're playing like a certain amount of seconds of two tracks simultaneously, especially if you're doing like a techno type thing. So I really wanted to like capture that feeling of like I'm matching on the beat and like it's like a game. It's always been like a game to me, like DJing has. So I really wanted to capture that. And yeah, we took it to MDev. We had something like 80 people play it and we got some good feedback. It's really early on. I can show it. It's really early on. I would consider this like a not even really an alpha. It's probably more like a vertical slice. We're calling it an alpha, but it's really early for an alpha because there's a lot of bugs and there's a lot of things that we need to fix. We're doing it on basically a sweat equity model. So like this is no funding basically. And once we do launch it, it's going to be Android and iOS. And once we do launch it, then we're going to take the proceeds of the money we made and split amongst the team. There's really like we did try a Patreon for a while, but we didn't really attract the attention. And one of the things about it is like we've been spending so much time and effort in just making the game that we really don't have time to
Yeah, I
market it.
mean, Patreon
Like
is a beast. Trust me.
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm sure you do. Yeah, because I saw you have one. Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to like. We just didn't have anyone dedicated to like making videos such as this one, or like just marketing things to really like be pumping into the Patreon. So it kind of just peered out. I mean, it still exists, but
Mhm.
I'm not really even going to drop the URL just because like I don't feel that it's worth it right now. And I think the best thing we can do is just like continue the model we're going with and then eventually launch it on Android and iOS.
Mhm.
And then at that point, we'll have to figure out how to do marketing, but that's down the road, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and
no doubt.
maybe we'll talk to Cavallo and his shadow publishing group or something, but I don't know, like something, right? We'll figure
Yeah.
something out. So,
That also, to kinda tie it back a little bit to sort of the different, ways that you've gone about this, from the AAA to the independent, you don't necessarily have to worry about some of those things in the AAA as far as marketing and as far as all those
right.
things where it's like you said, you gotta wear these different hats now, and
Yep.
it's only so many hours in the day that you can work on something, and, you kinda have to prioritize what it is that you can
Yep.
kinda get done at that, certain time. So if it's gonna be on Android and iPhone, right? So what is the mechanics like? Run through me like how am I going to be making beats or how am I going to be like is the narrative sort of woven within it? Like how is the flow?
One of our biggest inspirations was Patapon on the PSP. So Patapon is this old game now, but it basically had you progress and like basically what they would call minions, we're calling beat spirits, but there's these little like helpers that spawn and then they fight other things, but only if you successfully are matching on the beat. And that's the mechanic is you match on the beat, little what we're calling flux, these little like notes come up the screen and then you tap and when you hit it, you fill the meter and then you drag the meter up and that activates your ability. As far as the story, we're using what we call talk sprite. So it's just like little 2D images of the
Okay.
characters talking, kind of almost like JRPG style,
Mm.
where it just like shows you like the what the character is saying. In our case, we've got this like dream sequence where like the main character's name is Alto and they wake up and they're in dream. They figure out that they're in dream and their city is kind of under attack and they figure out that they need to help. But that's just it's all a dream sequence, but
Mhm.
it's described out in the game. So this is normally obviously on the iPhone. So we opted to go with a basically a instead of a horizontal display, we opted to go with a vertical display. And so you'd have the phone like turn like this, right? And this is the story. It just kind of tells you what's going on. I guess I'll have to just describe it. So basically, there's usually an audio track playing here, but basically, this is showing the here. I'll start from the beginning. I had mentioned before in the interview. So we used to be Frozen Codebase, and now we're Thawed Codebase. We're doing this thing. It's called Noise Paradox. And basically, yeah, Alto is our main character, and they're sleeping now. And so we've got the story just kind of comes across at the top or the bottom of the screen, and you can click through this. Basically, the story is just that Alto is sleeping and they're kind of having a vision of, what their world looks like through the eyes of their dream.
Mhm.
And because they realize they're dreaming, they decide it's time to practice for their conductor test that's going on the next day. It's kind of basically an excuse to have a tutorial level of what it
Yeah,
is. And I'm just
yeah.
gonna skip through this stuff here, but this is their mentor Trill, who basically we use it as a motivation to show like why do you have to summon beat spirits? What do you have to do? How do you have to hit on the beat? So it's kind of like our tutorial mechanic.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we come through here, and this is the part where it's going to suck that you can't hear it, but you have to hit on the beat, and there's a song going on, and I'm playing blind here because I can't hear anything. But basically, I just hit to the beat, and then I start this track, and now we start with kind of the almost like Guitar Hero or Rock Band type thing,
Yep.
where it's like I have to hit on the beat each of these buttons. So that red one I just filled up, the blue one I just filled up, the yellow one I can fill up as well. And like that creates a shield, for example, whereas the blue,
Yeah.
our little, like I just heard that barely, but the red is more of like an area of effect attack, and the blue is a direct attack, and then the green is a heal. When I was testing this at MDev, I had a lot of people that thought they have to hit like all the buttons at the same time,
Yeah.
which we're kind of throwing you in the middle of the gameplay. Ideally, we would want to only present like one or two of these at a time and build you up to the spot where you have all four of them available to you, because these are basically like abilities that you get.
Yeah.
And, because you're trying to defeat the enemies that are coming from right to left, and I just got two of them now. So basically, you go through all these rounds of fighting enemies, and eventually we introduce a boss, and then we also have like other sizes of enemies like giant mechs and stuff like that that you can fight against. And it's basically just a beat matching game that progresses you from level to level, and your enemies have abilities that are activated by you hitting on the beat.
Okay. What is your ultimate idea for it? What is the end goal for you and Noise Paradox? Like, what does I mean, ultimately, if you know, would be a huge success and sell bajillion copies, obviously that would be wonderful. But
That'd be
like
great. But
what is your success metric as far as, your
I
passion
think
project?
I think ultimately it's just, we don't have to sell like millions of units. I mean, like honestly, if like just a small handful of people get it and they're happy with like being able to be a DJ, I'm gonna be happy. Like I think like it's since we're making it on very little budget. I mean, we did pay to go to MDev and stuff, but
Mm,
the amount of money we've spent on it is very small. So I feel like obviously like recouping that is great, but at the end of the day, it's more like just I mean, having it in the hands of people that can like play the story and also I think it's very important that we're telling a non-binary love story kind of thing where it's like Alto is um basically our key main character, and they sort of progress through the levels, and they just sort of like end up meeting Viola, who is the other main character that we have, and she is very much a different personality than him, and I think or than them rather. But I think that with this, we want to like get appreciation for the story as well as the beat matching mechanic at the same time, and like
mm,
people just really buying into that lore and into the whole idea that you can have a game that you know really relies on the audio as well as like still being kind of a fighter in a way, but it's more of a manipulative fighter, like a strategy based game. I think people appreciating that is all I'm really looking for. And I think like we're working with this local artist because, as I said, I used to be a DJ back in Madison back in the
mhm.
day. So I'm working with this guy, Matt Finale, who runs he's got a electro outfit. That's called Clack. Then he's got another one that's more industrial called Caustic, and he's got a techno thing that he's doing called Daddy Bear. And like, so basically, I want to work with local musicians essentially to bring their stuff to this platform, and that's kind of what I've been doing via Matt. And I think that doing more of that, you know, I kind of grew out of that scene, that kind of Madison kind of industrial scene, and I think getting some of that stuff in there. I am still looking for like more electro stuff too. Like I want more techno and stuff like that in there than some of the industrial that I've got lined up. So I think like it's not like we're going to be putting in like big names or something like that, like
Yeah.
Taylor Swift or something, like or whatever, right? Or like even some of the lesser known musicians. I think we're just talking about like independent musicians that we sort of broker deals with and stuff like that. So I think it's exciting for them too to see their stuff in a game.
So basically, you got this working, and then also you're working on another game now.
Never Alone too, the Alaska Native, yeah. That game has been so that's my main project, because that is, I am functioning as a principal engineer on that project. And it's, we're working with the Nupiaq people. They've got an entire organization of basically elders and experts in their culture that we work with to basically say, hey, this is what we want to do in the game. This is how we want to interact with spirits. This is how we want to like interact with like tools that the Nupiaq would use in the game. And that's been just really fun and exhilarating because I think a lot of times people say they want to make a game of a certain type and they don't bother to like really investigate the background material much. As an example, I remember going to a talk at GDC back in 2016, and there was this guy talking about how he was going to make a game for the Hopi Nation, and he had made most of the game. And then finally, he took it to the Hopi, and they were like, "Hey, don't do this." So he ended up with a game that he can't even release because they said, "Yeah, we don't want any of our like death rituals or whatever it was. They didn't want to be portrayed in a. They had like beliefs about that you can't portray certain things in any
Mhm.
sort of media, and we're going the direct opposite." Where it's like we're involving them from the get go. Sure, it's challenging at times, but it's also like really rewarding to see what they think of like us representing them in the game. Nuna plays as a budding shaman, so that's the main character,
Mhm.
and she's got this fox, that helps her out. And so it's a co-op game. We're looking at a lot of co-op games right now. I mean, obviously,
Mm.
Split Fiction did extremely well, and it continues to do extremely well. So we've got our work cut out for us, but it's primarily a co-op game, honestly. And so it's like same couch as well as online, and
Mhm.
that's been a big challenge. Even just in the sense of like trying to test things because we're working all remote on the project and like I've been just getting my son and telling him, "Hey, you have to play this. You have to be Fox because I need a second player basically.
Yeah.
So I'll just like force him to play. He's probably sick of the game at this point.
That's cool. Does that game have like any sort of release or I guess timeline currently or
It's as soon as we can get it done, I think is
Yeah.
where we're at. Like
Yeah.
it's I don't know, like it's been, like we had so one of the challenges here is that like we had a publisher Humble, which as you might know is now out of business. So one of the challenges is I mean, yeah, the first game Never Alone did really well. It's actually in like some museums and it got a BAFTA award and stuff.
Mhm.
Like Never Alone did extremely well back in 2015 or whatever. And, so that means we have to live up to that expectation, but also like we don't have a publisher anymore. So it's like, how do you live up to that expectation without having a publisher? So yeah, it's been a challenge. And I mean, the fact that the first game did well is bodes well for it because, the revenue coming in from that and stuff like that. But I don't know about a release date. I think
Mhm.
it's really like you're talking a while yet before you hear anything. We did have a
Mhm.
teaser video that I showed earlier
Mhm.
but that's from 2024, and that's the only stuff we put out since then. I did at last MDev in November of that year
Mhm.
in 24. I showed a little bit of it. I was working on wolves at the time, so the idea is that Nuna goes into this area that's populated with wolves, and what does she do to solve that puzzle, and how does she get out of it? Because it's a very low violence game, so obviously she's not going to go in there and fight wolves or
Mhm.
something, but
Mhm.
she has to get away from the wolves. And so I showed a little bit of that at MDev last year, not this year, or not this last November, but the prior November, and I showed a
Mhm.
little bit of it there, just in a talk. I just like gave a talk and showed
Mhm.
some of it, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully soon. My
That works
last game
out.
I actually shipped was on New World, and that was back in 2019.
Mm.
So I haven't shipped a game since 2019, and I'm feeling the itch.
I mean, and I hear that's like one of the most difficult things to do within
Yeah.
gaming is get a game shipped. Last word, if you got any socials you want people to find you, reach you.
I've got like, I would say that there's two things. I would say thawedcodebase.com would be one. And I mean, I've got a LinkedIn as well if people are into that. You can
Yep.
probably just query me as like Ben Geisler or whatever. Yeah, this is just our site. It's just a very basic website, but you can reach out to me here. There's like an info form somewhere at the bottom. This is like our team members and stuff. And we've got like a biography for each one of us. And then we've got like a contact form down there. This does take over to the Noise Paradox Patreon.
Yeah, we appreciate that.